Cinestill makes an E6 chemistry kit that is a little bit different from standard E6 chemistry kits that you usually get for home developing. Normally it all comes in one kit. You get the first developer, your color developer, your reversal bath, your bleach, your fix, all in one nice friendly kit, which is very easy to understand. The Cinestill stuff though has an option of buying some different first developers, which is pretty unique to the kit. There is the Daylight Chrome developer, there's Dynamic Chrome, and there's Tungsten Chrome. And then you have to buy the color and reversal bath separately, and the bleaches and fixer bath separately as well. I've done a video developing with some of this kit like way back a few years ago, and I was pretty unimpressed with the results from that. Things came out very dark. So I've been thinking about it for a while, and I bought all of the different developers, all 3 different versions of them, and I have a bulk roll of very fresh Kodak Ektachrome in here, and I have 4 cameras. I'm gonna roll down 4 rolls of Ektachrome, shoot one in this X300S, one in this X7A, one in this X370, and one in this X700. And even to eliminate variations across different lenses, I'm just gonna swap them and use this Minolta 50mm f1.7 lens on each camera. And I'm gonna shoot identical rolls, and then I'm going to develop them, one in the Dynamic Chrome, one in the Tungsten Chrome, and one in the Daylight Chrome. And then one I'm going to use in a Unicolor E6 chemistry kit. And then I'm going to compare them side by side just so we know. I'm going to shoot first with Robin, who was in the previous AGO video. This one ideally should go better than that one did. You're working way harder than I am during this video. I think the Cinestill stuff is specifically designed to be used with Ektachrome, and that's the one I'm going to use it for. If somebody else out there wants to try with expired slide film or Velvia or Provia and do the exact same thing that I'm doing, more power to you. Slide film is expensive, so this is what I've decided upon, and we're going to do it. For these 4 identical rolls of Ektachrome, we first set things up with daylight balance lights in a studio, and I took 7 photos of Robin. I would take the photo, swap the lens to the next camera, and take the same photo again, and so on for 4 cameras in total. Then we changed to tungsten lights, and I did the same thing. The Cinestill Tungsten Chrome developer says you don't have to change your exposure under tungsten lights, so I didn't. Then I did a series of shots outside, first in daylight with no filter on the lens. And then again with an 85B orange filter, and the developer says to overexpose by 1 stop when using that filter outside. And after shooting 4 rolls of film in the most inconvenient way possible for myself, the developing could actually begin. Okay, I'm gonna mix all my chemistry today and then develop in like a couple of days. I'm not going to show off the whole mixing of everything. It's just going to be a little mundane. I'm mixing everything with distilled water, and I'm just going to follow all the instructions for everything from the Cinestill and for the Unicolor kit, and then I will have a bunch of E6 chemistry. This is the chemistry that I'm working with. The Unicolor Rapid E6 kit comes in either 1 gallon or 1 quart kit, and this is a 3-bath E6 kit. It has everything in it. It uses a first developer, a color developer, and a Blix, all of which come in liquid form. The Cinestill Daylight Chrome first developer is a neutral tone first developer for Cinestill's CS6 3-bath slide process. CS6 stands for Creative Slide. It is meant for daylight balanced for neutral tone slides in daylight. It comes in a liquid form. The Cinestill Tungsten Chrome first developer is a cool tone first developer for Cinestill's 3-bath slide process. It is meant for tungsten balanced 3200 Kelvin for artificial light or cool tone Ektachrome 100 tungsten slides. It comes in a powder form. The Cinestill Dynamic Chrome first developer is a warm tone first developer for Cinestill's 3-bath slide process. It claims to offer extended exposure latitude, provides approximately 9+ stops of usable dynamic range, and renders slightly warm tones in daylight, shade, or with electronic flash. It comes in a powder form. And then the Cinestill Color and Reversal kit and the Cinestill Blix kit are, from what I understand, just really standard E6 kit, color and reversal and Blix chemistry. I wish I could say that this was going to be super easy to do. It's going to be a little bit of a pain. The unicolor chemistry all has to run at 100 degrees Fahrenheit for that kit. The Cinestill kit all needs to run at 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The Cinestill first developers all involve diluting the developer so that I can actually use it. So everything gets diluted 1-to-1. Whereas the unicolor kit, the first developer, is mixed straight from the kit and involves no dilution. So that is a very different, significantly different thing. I'm going to do my best to document this whole thing, more or less, but I'm probably going to skip through some of the developing part because after a certain point it's pretty repetitive. I'm kind of doing the same thing over and over again for 4 rolls. It's going to take me a little bit of time, and not recording the whole thing will preserve some of my energy and love of the game. And instead I will kind of focus more on the final results and the comparison. It is 7:20 p.m. after a work day, and I am ready to load my first roll of Ectochrome into my first Patterson tank. Roll number 1, Unicolor E6 kit. It is 8:26 p.m. and I am loading my second roll from the X300S, and we'll be doing it in the Cinestill kit using the Daylight Chrome developer. I'm diluting 1-to-1, so I'm doing 300 milliliters of first developer and then 300 milliliters of water to make 600 milliliters of working solution, which is what I will also do for Dynamic Chrome and Tungsten Chrome, so don't ask. Alright, it is 9:30 and we are starting roll number 3, the X700. We're doing it in Tungsten Chrome Developer. It is 10:16 p.m. and now I will load the 4th and final roll, the X370 roll, which I will develop for 9 minutes in the Cinestill Dynamic Chrome first developer. Unicolor. The Unicolor roll looks great. The Ectochrome came out really, really beautiful. Great looking color and detail and vivid images, which is really just what you want to get with slide film. I find Ectochrome in general to be a little cool, and you can see that in some of these outside shots, but that's definitely not out of the ordinary, and I've seen lots of people recommend shooting it with a slight warming filter outside. Obviously, the tungsten light shots and the tungsten filter outdoors result in images that are much too warm. Overall, great looking images, great looking development, nice clear slides, great amount of detail in the shadows and the highlights. Really just good looking Ektachrome. These scans were done with my digital Lumix camera using a little negative supply 35mm film holder for camera scanning. And I've tried to capture the slides accurately, but I think slide film is really impossible to capture or scan in a way that is ever going to do it justice compared to actually looking at the original or projecting it. Cinestill Daylight Chrome. This stuff is awful. This Ektachrome roll developed in the Daylight Chrome first developer is, first of all, so incredibly dark and so blue that I really couldn't believe it when I pulled it out of the tank. As a note here, these images were captured in the exact same way that I captured the Unicolor frames. Again, using the digital camera, and these Cinestill Daylight Chrome shots are captured using the exact same exposure settings as the Unicolor images. So they really are that much darker. Even though Cinestill describes this developer as being for neutral tone slides in daylight, everything shot under daylight looks especially blue. In fact, if we look at the images done under tungsten light or with the tungsten filter, those are closer to a proper white balance compared to the daylight images. I did do a second pass with my digital camera with different exposure settings to try and get images off of this roll that are easier to see for the sake of this video. You really can see how much closer the tungsten shots are to accurate colors, but there's still like significantly less shadow detail on these images than there should be based on the Unicolor roll. Cinestill Tungsten Chrome. The Tungsten Chrome developer was an improvement over the Daylight Chrome developer in terms of density. This roll at least came out bright enough that I could see the images without having to really blast some light through the film. So yes, all of the daylight shots are very blue, bluer than the Daylight Chrome shots. And then when we switch to shooting under tungsten, the images are not blue anymore. It's definitely an improvement and has shifted the colors so things look more accurate, but it doesn't just fix things perfectly. I find that all of the shadows still stay really blue, so there's this weird look to things where the colors are just off. The best examples are under the controlled tungsten lights where the background looks kind of white, but Robin's skin tone and her dark shirt are never really right. The worst examples are using the tungsten filter outside where there's a weird blue to everything and the colors look just weird and muted. It's a look that I really don't like. Again, as a quick reference, here are some scans I did at a brighter exposure setting so that we can see things a bit better. It's brighter than the Daylight Chrome, sure, but compared to the Unicolor roll still, it's unacceptably dark. Dynamic Chrome. Boasting extended exposure latitude, 9+ stops of usable dynamic range, preserved highlight and shadow detail with rich tones for a more cinematic look, and giving you slides that are optimized for scanning, this roll developed in Dynamic Chrome looks like garbage. This roll is about as bad as the Daylight Chrome roll, so darker than the Tungsten Chrome roll, and with complete loss of any shadow detail. The best thing that I can give it is that it's slightly warmer than the Daylight Chrome roll for images shot under daylight. So this looks better color-wise. I'm really at a loss for what more to say here. This and the Daylight Chrome rolls are really similar in how terribly dense they are, and I can see nothing reflected in these images that is even close to the language Cinestill uses to market it. Here again are some of these frames captured at a brighter exposure on my digital camera to have a better look at what's going on. For all of the rolls, I did some bracketed exposures on them to see how things look when underexposed by one stop, then exposed properly, and then overexposed by one stop. Sure, things on the unicolor roll lose shadow detail when we do some underexposure, thus is just what you get when you're working with slide film, but it's nothing like what happens with any of the Cinestill developers. Everything on the Cinestill developed rolls look like they're underexposed by like 4 stops here. The Cinestill rolls also have a few extra shots at the end of them that the unicolor roll doesn't, because that one Minolta stopped wanting to advance for me 4 exposures from the end. And just before we move on, here's a side-by-side of all 4 rolls so you can really see the difference. The unicolor roll just keeps blowing everything out of the water here in terms of density, shadow detail, color. I don't know why I'm still looking at the Cinestill stuff. But really, the best visual comparison is to look at these rolls just laid out side by side so that we can see how beautiful the unicolor roll looks and how dark everything else is. It's also a little harder to see on the video here, but the unexposed film at the beginning of the rolls all look different as well across the developers. Just this unexposed developed base. The unicolor looks nice and clear without a color cast on it. The daylight chrome is really blue. The tungsten chrome looks okay, though maybe denser and grayer than the unicolor. And the dynamic chrome looks slightly purplish. Really, the tungsten chrome is the only one that kind of has okay density of the Cinestill rolls, and it's still really not great and just doesn't compare to the detail that I can see from a properly developed roll. The real test here ultimately is how does all this ectochrome look when you project it in a slide projector? Because that is the joy and at least like the big thing for why I shoot slide film. So I am unfortunately at the moment a little short on slide mounts because they're becoming increasingly harder and harder to find. So this won't be like the best projection ever, but I happen to have this accessory, which is a slide projector lens that you can feed film through. It's a film strip adapter. So instead of cutting this all up and mounting it into slide mounts, I'm just going to feed it through the lens and briefly look at it as the final conclusion of how truly terrible the Cinestill results look. Also, just because of the way that this kind of works, there's like a kind of circular pattern in the middle of the image when you're projecting with this. It's just because of like the glass elements in it, so it's not a flawless projection. So that's just the lens, but mostly let's look at color and density. So what can I say? Did I expect this? Kind of, but honestly not to the extreme that I got when I pulled those Cinestill rolls out of the developing tanks. Years ago, I'd used some of the Daylight Chrome First Developer in a video, and I remember thinking that my results seemed pretty dark in comparison to a slide film that I'd had developed before, but it was a little bit of a mixture of some expired Fuji stuff, maybe some Ektachrome at the time, so I just wasn't sure exactly what to think of it. But now seeing things side by side, an identical roll that was developed in good E6 chemistry, the results are really crazy. I wouldn't wish these results on anybody, especially considering how expensive Ektachrome is these days. And I really don't know what to say, because I was hoping that things would just be like a bit more of an interesting comparison, as opposed to Unicolor is really good and all the Cinestill stuff is really bad. But I do know that I'm not the only person out there who has found the Cinestill stuff to be less than satisfactory. But really, I guess that the joke is ultimately on me, because I spent over $100 Canadian to buy all the Cinestill stuff, and it all really, really sucks. You know what the weirdest thing about all of this is? The first developer in an E6 process is basically just a black and white negative developer. It just acts to develop a negative image before the reversal, and then the color developer steps do all the activation of the color couplers and dyes. So I don't know why this looks so bad, but I also don't know what Cinestill has like injected into these first developers that then is impacting the tone of the colors in the final images. I don't know. I mixed the chemistry, I followed all the steps, I did exactly everything that I should have based on all the information for the Cinestill kits, and everything that came out really looks pretty awful. But this stuff, this looks so good. Thank you so much for checking this out. This is obviously not sponsored by Cinestill, but don't buy any of the chemistry. I just really can't recommend any of it. The Unicolor kit is always really, really good. I've seen it developed for 35 stills like this. I know people who use it a lot for developing Super 8 and 16mm Ektachrome, and that comes out looking really, really great. And just always super consistent. So that is the best E6 kit that I've personally used. I know there are other ones out there. Tetnol used to be a great one, but I think that they are bankrupt now. Again, maybe something like that. You can find some links in the description down below for ways to help me support making some of these videos as often as I can make them. There's a Patreon, there's a PO box if you want to support or send interesting weird film camera things along for me to take a look at. And as always, thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.